Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Emily Craig. She's a partner for talent and transformation at IBM US Federal. Emily, good to have you on.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be here.
And our topic is talent acquisition, skills development, big challenges across the government. Almost every agency talks about these. From your standpoint, what do you think are the principal workforce challenges that the government is facing nowadays?
So I'd say three big ones. Top of mind is the same challenge that the federal agencies have in common with private industry, keeping up with the pace of change. Agencies are trying to meet the needs of more diverse, growing constituencies. There's more complexity. They're adopting new technology to deliver that mission, and that's creating a big skills gap. Right, and we're seeing the same thing in federal agencies as private sector, is what these agencies and these businesses need in order to be successful to deliver that mission and what they actually have. And it's creating this really complex cycle of workforce planning, of trying to look out into the future and predict what they're going to need 2, 3, 4 years from now, and figure out how they grow those skills with their current workforce, how they acquire those skills, through recruiting and hiring. And how do they plan for skills that maybe they're not, the workforce resilience in order to adopt new skills that they're not even aware of yet. So I put that first on the list.
Yeah, it sounds like then they have kind of a continuum of issues. One is recruiting people, that is the acquisition of talent, but then there are the people they have, the 2 million people that are in the government
That's
that
right.
need reskilling, skills development. I mean, is that a good way to put it?
That's absolutely a great way to put it. And that topic of talent acquisition, it's near and dear to my heart personally, and some of the areas, one of the areas that I'm very focused on. But think about this. So think about the model, right? The standard for agencies is an average of an 80-day hiring cycle. Like, do you want to wait 80 days to get your next job? If you're the manager, you've probably started that process well in advance of that 80 days, because you might not even be able to start recruiting for that position until somebody actually leaves it. So you might be without that skill for even longer. Now, that 80-day standard is an average. Some jobs will take less to fill, but some jobs will take even more, right? And in today's workforce, they don't want to wait that long. Right? And the government can't afford to have so many positions open for that long period of time and be missing those critical skills. So that is a
Yes, because
huge.
I was going to say there's even a shortage in some cases. I can think of one major department just the other day that hired a new chief data officer, but they recruited someone from another agency where they already had that job. Maybe that's because it takes so long to find someone, first to locate and identify the talent and then to bring them into the government. You've got a long cycle there.
And that's a really important point too, and an important strategic shift that the federal government needs to make in order to be competitive for talent in the marketplace. It's those same sets of skills. It's those technical skills, it's the IT skills, it's mathematics, it's statisticians, it's data science, things like that. Private industry is recruiting for those, and they're recruiting in advance of demand. They're building relationships with candidates. They're curating experiences to attract those people to come work for their company. And that is the important shift that these agencies need to make as well, is looking at what those critical occupations are, getting out in front of actually posting the requisition, finding and curating candidates. So then when that job opens up, you've already got a built pipeline that you can encourage to apply for the job.
And do you think maybe agencies sometimes spend a little bit too much time navel gazing? That is to say, in trying to do workforce planning, perhaps they should look out further, see what are industry looking for. And maybe that's a good clue as to what government might need, because in many ways they perform similar functions across a lot of different domains.
Yes, absolutely, right. And that is an important role that technology can play in helping with the workforce planning. How do you marry up the insights that you have inside of your own four walls, inside of your agency? How do you leverage the structured data that sits in your systems and unstructured data that you have around your mission to crystallize what are those most critical skills and marry those up with industry insights? to pay attention to what's going on outside your four walls and to inform that workforce planning. So the old, method of position management and tables of authorities and how do you plan for the future and how do you do all this in Excel, it's a big shift that these agencies have to start to make, that uses analytics and artificial intelligence to forecast what they're going to need, looking out in the future, but do so in an agile way that they're able to revisit and refresh and replan continuously, and be able to adjust their strategy as new and bring in new information over time.
And you mentioned artificial intelligence, and maybe that's one of the skills they need, not only to apply that technology to finding skills, but they need that expertise in the government. I take IBM itself as an example. Many years ago, it had thousands of machinists building hardware. Now it's a total services company, and Watson and all of these artificial intelligence types of applications. So maybe briefly before the break, what are some of the specific skills that seem to be in short supply for government and probably for industry also?
So no surprise, right? Cybersecurity is another one that's hugely important, right? And so timely with the recent coverage, in the news around the exposure, the SolarWinds exposure, artificial intelligence. But there's a lot that's embedded in AI. There's machine learning, there's specific programming languages, there's cloud computing. That's a big part of AI. So if you take the very broad topic and start to break it down, there's a lot of subsidiary skills and knowledge that's necessary. But something that's really interesting. So IBM, the Institute for Business Value, is constantly studying these different trends that are going on in the workforce, in companies, and they take a global view. And within the last couple of years, went out and asked over 1,000 leaders around the world, business and government, like what are those most critical skills? And we saw a big shift in the last time we asked that question. So technology skills, STEM skills have been at the top of the list. They're still in the top 10, but they're in the bottom half of the top 10. And what's in the top 10 now are things like teamwork and communication and intellectual curiosity and time management. So what we're seeing is those technical skills are really important, but they're not sufficient, because the technical skills have to be constantly refreshed. So we're looking for people that come in, with those skills, but also the ability, the curiosity, and the impetus to continue to reskill themselves.
All right, we're going to delve into that more right after the break, but let's take a short break. My guest today is Emily Craig. She's a partner for talent and transformation at IBM US Federal. I'm your moderator, Tom Temin. This discussion is how technology can rev up federal talent and skills development, sponsored by IBM here on Federal News Network.